I'll bring one up then.
Bobby first.
Okay, can we go down the list? Where
Anywhere you
general
want to start,
government,
miss.
which I see is a lot less. Last year was requested 147,000 plus, and now it's only 90,000. So my questions are, first of all, what is the general government wages? Because I noticed that's down $8,000. Where do those wages go? Who's that for?
Custodial.
Joe, go ahead.
Custodial,
Is that custodian?
trash removal,
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think it's in-
Town hall, that part of
and the
that.
library, and this building. I think that's
Okay.
about all there is.
And so you're not gonna clean as much?
Well, if we look at our spend, last year was
Oh.
8,700,
So
look
maybe
at the
it's big-
spend,
Okay,
it's always underspent. And that was kind of a theme as we went through the budget, with the selectmen, when we saw, consistent year after year of, I would say, dramatic over budgeting, we tended to trim it back a little bit.
okay.
This budget was
Yeah.
also $40,000, fuel, which got moved out in separate line items.
Yes, I do know that.
Yeah.
The other one, the general, the buildings, which, you have $15,000, like you did last year, and you only spent $4,000. I just want to know, are you going to use that maintenance on buildings this year?
Yes, we got it. And I think we're, at least in better shape in identifying some contractors that can get that work done. That's kind of the thing, sometimes it's, you know, yeah, the selectmen didn't get around to spending the money they said they were gonna spend. And sometimes, honestly, it's, they couldn't find a contractor to do the work that we knew needed to be done. And it drags on throughout the year and it ends up not being spent. I'm not saying that's always the case, but it's certainly sometimes that's the case.
Anything else, Bobby?
That's it for that.
Jesse?
Well, I would like to bring up and ask and see what everybody thought. We are going to need a new defibrillator in the next year. I was going to ask for it next year. We could ask for it this year. Ours is 13 years old. And they come in at the bargain basement price of $30,000.
Get a break if you buy two.
That's actually with a 27% discount to the Dartmouth Hitchcock Alliance. So without that, it's more.
So as a bureaucrat, my recommendation would be to turn that into a warrant article because the number's so big, rather than a budget line. And remember, the selectmen are constrained. We can't add that to Article 2. The voters can. But because we have that 3% cap, that would, I think, pretty seriously put us over the threshold.
It would.
And so, this is how it's gonna have to work. It's either gonna be added to Article 2 in February, or it's gonna be added to the warrant in February, or it's not gonna happen.
And I think what Jesse was doing wisely was bringing it up at this meeting, so it could be discussed at a later time.
So Jesse has broken the code. Anybody else got an item like that that we do not wanna lose sight of?
Yeah.
A dump truck.
If they're doing it less than $200,000, but right around that number.
David's been very consistent and thorough about lining out his capital improvement needs going forward. Glenn's been doing all the legwork. The selectmen are not yet convinced that a brand new 10-wheel dump truck purchase is right for the department at this moment. But having said it now, we can have the discussion tonight, we can have a discussion in February, we can do both, and then the voters can decide whether or not to spend that money in March. We've talked about purchase, about lease, about how the operations of the department would become more efficient and ideally less expensive with the addition of this piece of equipment and the subtraction of 1.5 other pieces. We're not convinced yet, but what that really means is not that the selectmen think David is making this up. We think we haven't been doing our homework as thoroughly and as rapidly as we should have. We've also been approaching, this is not a knock on you, David, the selectmen have not been doing their homework as thoroughly as we should. Glenn's been very supportive and very helpful with trying to get numbers from outside vendors, and we're still talking about a lease option with one vendor, which I find very attractive. We're also still talking about a multi-use truck that could haul trash plow snow, spread sand, and move dirt all year round. But I haven't finished that research, and the question remains open as to whether we will have anything cogent to recommend by February. We certainly won't if it's left just to the three of us, but if we get some encouragement and some support, then who knows? But now that it's been said, it can be brought up again in February, either as a warrant article or a modification to Article 2 by the voters, not by the selectmen. Clear? Now,
What about friendly meals and the money that is appropriated for that?
entirely up to the voters. What we did this year that we've never done before was break that out so you can see it. We've been spending that money all along, but it's been sort of buried in line items in general government. So what we asked Kelly to do about 6 or 8 months ago was go through all the propane bills, go through the custodial bills, take a share of the electricity bill for this building, and try to apportion out what the friendly meal support actually costs the town. And that's where it appears for the first time, right there.
So,
Taxpayers have the authority to set those numbers to zero. That does not bind the selectmen, but if the voters did that, they would be fools to ignore that advice.
Friendly Meals is losing where they are operating. So, is that this year or next year?
As far as I know, and I didn't, saw Mary Lou this morning, they got a sufficient number of signatures for the warrant that they're proposing. And that basically says it'll be on the ballot. Will the town of Alstead allow them to build a building of X amount of, X size with, I think, 28 parking spots?
It's printed on Article 19 on your warrant sheet.
Oh,
Very last one.
And it should be clear, we're talking about the food shelf now, not the friendly. The food shelf.
Right, but I believe what their goal is I understand it, is to get both of those activities into one building.
Under one roof.
Parking spaces,
Excuse me?
that's gonna be a lot more than 28 parking spaces.
Yeah, that's why it's on a warrant.
Yeah.
But I think it was really good that, and this comes from a couple different things, you know, we did get a group together to work with the board of directors of Friendly Meals and the Food Shelf. That was the first step, and I'm glad we were finally able to break out these numbers so that taxpayers can actually see what contribution you all have been making to that organization. And now you can see.
Well, it's also quite vague saying a parcel of land, is that gonna be surveyed? I mean, is it gonna be done correctly and deeded? Are you giving it to Friendly Meals?
When an article,
Where does the responsibility end?
when an article comes to us by petition, we print it on the ballot guide. Even if the language is vague or would not withstand a challenge by the legislature or the court, because those are the rules. So we tried to advise them how this might be written. Some of that advice was accepted, some of it was not. This is what the warrant article is going to say. It will be up to whoever's administering, should it pass, and I wonder, whoever's administering that event will have to answer exactly those questions. Is there a survey? If so, who's going to pay for it? Well, I think I know the answers that are assumed to most of those questions.
Yeah, you
I'm
remember,
not entirely-
we've been through this exercise 3 or 4 years ago.
I
Exact same
know,
thing.
I know that.
Now, there is a committee that you could all belong to that meets every other Monday in the Langdon Town Hall, hosted by them.
Yeah, one point I've brought up is that you can't take a piece of land like that and just plop a building in the middle of it. You need to do a site plan of the whole piece of property. What is the future of that property? Is there gonna be condos in the back? Is there gonna be ball fields in the back? You know, there's a whole slew of ideas for that property. You just can't go into it and say, I'm gonna plop a building down the middle of it.
Well, that's what this warrant article would do. Michael?
Absolutely.
As the guy who was tasked to make that site plan, one of the issues we had was that the land had never been surveyed. Lolly's end had, but not the end where the Friendly Meals building was gonna go, because if you remember, we spent a lot of hours, a lot of time, and even some money coming up with plans for it. Are we gonna fund a survey?
If I were in charge.
It's our
I'd say
property, I mean,
absolutely.
are we gonna finally fund it, figure out what we own?
I think we do, actually.
We had volunteers willing to do the work, but nobody would support a few $1,000 to have it surveyed. Just saying.
Well, if you're gonna throw it away at the food shelf, I mean, it's just more money,
Did we have some of that surveyed
It
already?
was originally purchased for that purpose.
It's, you know my opinion on it, but apparently it's not popular opinion, so.
The land was originally purchased?
That was the intent by the people who had purchased it.
Oh, I thought it was
To do
during
what?
the flood for the homes.
Put a food shelf on it?
That was
If
never.
I remember,
No,
Never.
never.
okay,
That was never.
okay. I can be wrong. I like to think we all can.
Put it this way, it wasn't sold to us like that.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it wasn't sold, but I think one of the people who invested heavily in that, I thought his intention was very much. That's what I understood. I could be wrong. I know I'm not concerned. I know I'm not wrong when it comes to that particular investor.
Just remember that it's up to us in February and March, regardless of what brought us to this point, or how perfectly or imperfectly the warrant article is written. It's only us that will pass or fail that warrant article, no one else.
Why's Langdon done? Yeah, so they don't.
They want to use that building to generate revenue for the town, and they've already made a huge step forward on that by leasing it to the school district administration, and got them out of that rat hole on Elm Street in Charlestown, which I think is a good move for everyone. And I think ultimately, now I shouldn't be speaking for the Langdon Board of Selectmen, but it was certainly true last year that the Board of Selectmen in Langdon wanted to sell that building and go back to their town hall, which they had just finished renovating, and to get out of the real estate business. Now that's a different group of men than the current select board, so I'm not representing their opinion. But I think that's a trend supported by the voters with them.
I was under this understanding when Lou Bean came to town, that he said other towns were looking into putting a building up as well, and that we were told by, in the meeting, that Langdon was also putting it on their warrant articles. Do we know if Langdon is putting it on their warrant articles?
We don't know that, and we won't for some number of weeks, because they're a traditional town meeting town.
So if this, say this article goes through, and we haven't done a site plan, and Langdon decides they have the ideal spot, how is that going to affect us giving a piece of property to the Friendly Meals if it was to go?
Well, I resolve conundrums like that in the same way every time I try to get everybody in the room around one table and figure out where we are and where we want to go. And in this case, I would definitely be looking for legal advice, because I don't think this particular warrant article is written well enough.
You should have probably kept that quiet for a long time.
I'm sorry?
You kept that quiet a little longer. That's what I was wondering.
Because it is Friendly Meals.
What'd you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering. If it's not written, maybe
Is
he
there
has
been
no
any,
control over it. No, I know you don't have any control over it. I'm just saying.
Here's what we will promise to do, as we do every year, when the warrant articles settle down after the February meeting. We'll ship them off to the town attorney and to the New Hampshire Local Government Center for analysis. And they will say, you can vote this in if you want, but you're not doing this.
Do they have a chance to change that though in the meantime?
Nope.
So this is how it would be.
This is how it's going to appear
So
on
this
the.
is illegal as a non-issue.
I can't answer that because I didn't go and ask them.
does the select board recommend or not recommend this article?
We already declined to put this article on the warrant, so I can't speak for these guys, but I think the trend is that we will not recommend
You
this
were
warrant.
forced to because it had 25
Right.
seats.
Yeah, well, forced is one way of putting it. It's a democracy. Small d democracy. Barbara, I'm sorry.
Can't Friendly Meals go into a building that's already built and empty?
Absolutely. And I'm really hoping that will never be up to the Alstead selectmen to decide. I don't want to administer Friendly Meals or the food shelf, and I bet the voters of Alstead don't want the select board to administer it either.
Well, there's some nice buildings in Walpole that.
And that committee does not have a representative from Alstead on it. Monday nights. Bobby,
According to Dave Mooney, who's been part of this, Dave Mooney, who's been part of putting together the petition and everything, I did ask him if there was going to be a petition by the selectmen or by warrant in Langley, and he said, no, there is not going to be.
There you go.
It's only Alstead.
We'll see what happens. Other comments on this particular item? It's a conundrum for me. I want to support this operation, but I personally don't want to support it this way. And so that's why I'd like you to take another look at those 4 line items for hard cash support for food shelf / friendly meals,
So maybe
because
we should turn those to 0.
you could, you have that authority, but let me stress that the select board is not compelled. They would be wise to, but within Article 2, we're not compelled to take your advice.
But these numbers are for running friendly meals in here.
Correct.
It has nothing to do with the food shelf or the kitchen over there, right?
I don't think that's true either.
Okay.
I think that the operations are so commingled, based on where food is stored versus where it's distributed versus where it's prepared versus where the 19 freezers are, that you would be hard pressed to do a real analysis of costs separated by those 2 institutions. Certainly, we didn't have any trouble finding old propane and electric bills, but I'll bet some of the money we spent on propane heated or thawed food that wound up at the food shelf rather than being fed here.
But what I'm
with Meals on
saying,
Wheels.
if 0 is out, who pays for them to be here to have heat and electricity
Nobody.
until they have another
So they
place?
gotta go. That's the critical
So,
piece.
I mean, I just think that people would have to realize if they're going to, if they don't want them here, then there has to be another solution. And I don't know if 0ing it out is the solution.
Well, I'm certainly not gonna recommend that, but the voters will have the final say. John?
Doesn't that amount to about $2 a person per year?
Perhaps less than that.
Is too much a resident?
But the principle is the same. The principle that we wanted to talk about was are the voters willing to support basically a private charity with public money?
Right.
It's not how much money. It's, are we willing to continue doing this? We've been doing it for a long time. It doesn't mean that we're bound to do it. Just wanted to get it out in front of you so that you didn't feel like you were being hoodwinked in some way. Robert?
Joe, real quick, if I heard earlier, these are your proposals, not necessarily Ford's.
That is correct, and I would hope to use a word other than proposals. I needed to get something on paper to put in front of you, so I filled in the gaps based on my belief that we should spend down the fund balance.
Understood. Okay. So therefore, my question is, if these are all these 19 articles going to be on the ballot, up for review in February?
Yep.
So therefore, they are the select board's proposals.
The articles themselves are the select board's proposals when they leave this room tonight. The numbers within them, the important stuff,
Right.
is up to us in February.
Yeah.
And they will change, I guarantee it. We will say, you know what, we're taking too much out of that capital reserve fund, we should take more from fund balance, or vice versa, or we're not buying that damn thing. We've done it every single different way from Sunday in years past. Last year we set something to 0, what was it?
Line striping?
Something appeared on the warrant with a dollar amount, and the voters in February amended the dollar amount to 0. The warrant article still appeared on the ballot, but at that point it didn't matter whether you voted for it or against.
That line stripping, didn't we approved that last year?
Yep.
Did that get done?
Yeah.
How much do they do? They do $10,000 a year, is that all roads?
Every car road in town except for the little street.
Gets striped? So they can strike again this year?
They should be striped every year because after you've done plowing and everything you do, it's gone. It's just a dull thing down.
Does that happen on 123?
That's
Not
not,
by us.
this our town road. Our town roads have 2 white lines and 1 yellow line down the center. Like on the mine road.
And the joke is that the older you get, the more you're in favor of this particular item.
Hey, that's not a joke.
Do they have bright and yellow paint so it lasts for 2 years?
It's just like the state paint.
How come they don't make it
Because they don't put,
It wears off.
they don't have the glass beads in it like they used to have. They used to pour them right
Probably
through it.
environmentally friendly.
You
Yeah.
can donate on that, can you?
We got some glass.
You can mix the glass in with the paint before you put it down.
So, where are we? And where do we wanna go? Another department?
I have one more question on this.
Where are we?
Well, we're back at general government.
Okay.
With the friendly meals, and I understand that this is money that the town is spending for a private organization to be at the town hall. But you're saying it's not part of the town. So my question is this: why every year do we see a report from Friendly Meals Food Shelf in our town report? It should only be the organization's part of the town.
I think because the organization is important to many people in town. I have never heard an objection to that report appearing in the town report, but I'll hear one now if you like.
Well, I'm asking the question why it's there.
There's my
I guess
answer.
I've heard it.
Yeah, I agree, because it's our postage we're paying, it's gonna get a message.
Well, this year you
Not
take
so
over
much
the
the
town
money.
hall.
That's it, it's promoting.
The overall tension in the last 15 years has been going from how people in this community have run this town since 1766 or something, 63. And the tension has been bureaucracy it, by writing everything down, job descriptions, policies, all that kind of modern stuff. And the Friendly Meals report in the town report is there because it was the logical place to put it when we were just running the town. Now, we are sorting out questions like, well, is it a town thing or is it a private thing? You know, and those are legitimate discussions. But it's not illogical how it got there. Because we were just doing it by the seat of our pants for 250 years. And now we're being more formal about it. And some of us like that, and some of us don't like it so much. And I guess when we come to vote at the primary, we're going to have to show our ID whether we're known here for 40 years or not, right?
Right.
Right.
And that's going to annoy me and some other people. But anyway, it's just being modern.
How much is left? How much underspend are you this year? And which that money then will go into the fund balance at the end of next year? How much is that?
I think it's around $148,000.
$150,000, so that's gonna go into next year's fund balance. Okay.
So, yeah, there may be different numbers on there, somewhere between 148 and 190.
Okay, because, all right, the last I heard.
That number's actually determined by the auditor.
Right, yeah, so we haven't got that.
It's a little slippery, but that's the neighborhood we're in, less than 200,000. And from my bureaucratic belief, that's about the right number. That we should have that much slosh in our annual operating budget. It's less than 10% to buy a transmission or a roof or something.
Plus the 5% you have to have anyway.
Well, that 5% doesn't get spent without the direct supervision of the voters. That's a little different, but substantially the same.